Buongiorno a tutti e a tutte, benvenuti a questa conferenza stampa del film che presentiamo stasera sulla Piazza Grande, l'opera seconda della regista inglese Alice Lowe. My name is Mathilde Enrault. I'm a member of the selection committee here at the Locarno Film Festival. And I'm going to ask you to extend a warm welcome to the team of the film, Timestalker, the director, Alice Lowe, the actors, Jacob Andersen and Nick Frost.
Hello.
And the producer, Vaughan Sivell. So I'm going to start with a few questions, and then I'll invite you all to ask your question to the team. Well, first, thank you. Thank you for the laugh. Maybe as a first question, you can tell us what the idea comes from. I mean, I really like this kind of twisted fairy tale in a way. It was like, I thought about, all the romantic fairy tales that are told to little girls, like they would live happily ever after. And I liked very much that you focused on the ever after.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to see if it was possible to write a rom-com that had a more modern feel to it, because I think, as you say, we brought up with these same narratives, these almost Disney narratives of like the princess meets the prince and that's the end. That's the end of the story. And I was like, well, what if the prince just isn't that into her? Which to me seemed like a funny idea. And, I love the idea of unrequited love. I think it's a sort of really modern preoccupation in a way that, you can't always have what you want. And for that reason, love, whatever it means, can be a sort of damaging, painful thing. It's not necessarily what's good for us, what we chase. So it was a way of sort of shaking up the same old narratives, really, and finding a new way to tell that story.
Yeah, and I like very much as well the fact that you chose those period of time that structure the film. It's quite funny, actually. We opened Piazza Grande with a film called The Flood, about Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, and the film ends when he's beheaded, and one of the period is 1793, which is when Marie Antoinette was beheaded.
Yeah. I definitely chose that era intentionally because I guess I just wanted to see the different ways that people, or women specifically, are trapped in different eras. Like, there's no perfect era to be a woman, basically. There's always some drawback or other. And I just felt like in that era, I'm obsessed with Marie Antoinette anyway. You'll see that from the film. It's a very Rococo, Baroque kind of maximalist film. There's lots of different ideas in there. But yeah, I definitely felt like, what are the things that can go wrong for you as a woman across time? Like, one of them is being beheaded, for sure. There's some other stuff that can go wrong. And it was that. That was what entertained me about it. And then that not being the end. You think that's the end, but actually it continues and it doesn't stop. And just this idea of, if someone was really obsessed with you, or you were obsessed with someone else, maybe that feeling wouldn't stop. Even after death, you'd just continue. So yeah, that was the sort of original concept for this like reincarnation rom-com.
Yeah. So, Alice, you seem to have like quite unusually appealing characters. I was wondering to ask maybe Jacob and Nick, what appealed you both in the characters you act?
What appealed to you?
Well, firstly, Alice's script is still, to this day, one of my favourite things I've ever read. And it's hilarious and genius. But I think the thing I loved about Scipio is that he is very much linked in, kind of to Alice's point, being trapped in his case, kind of servitude and trapped in cycles that are damaging and destructive. That feels like, that's what love is as well. The relationships that you have can bind you into really destructive cycles as well as make you happy and give you life. And yeah. I think I remember, Alice, at one point you were like, he's kind of the angel of death. I was like, that's cool. That's fun.
Yeah, hey, hello. I think George is just a dream for an actor because you just get to be an absolute horrible pig. Yeah, I mean, I think you probably hear lots of actors say they love playing the bad guy, and it's absolutely true. You know, I got to do things on set that I'd probably get divorced for in real life. I mean, I definitely would.
Or arrested.
Arrested, both of us. Yeah, he's, you know, again, as what Alice said, it's his love for you is unrequited. You know, they're just not right for one another, sadly, and it takes lots of lifetimes to find out that that's the case, you know. And I think if you watch the film, you shouldn't like George at all. I mean, you should hate him, but if we've done it right, once he gets kind of released at the end, you should think, oh, that's quite a nice ending for a monster, you know, which is kind of a nice thing to do as an actor, you know, I think.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of redemption in the film, which I felt is quite unusual. We don't really, culturally, we're not that into redemption right now. And I felt like I wanted to do something that historically had a bit of perspective of just like, everybody has a shit time to an extent. Sorry, I don't know if I should swear. But, you know, everyone's sort of in the film wants to be escaping the role that they're playing or the situation they're in. And I think everyone can relate to that, you know. And I was just lucky enough that these guys kind of liked the characters and wanted to play with the characters. There's a lot of improvisation in the film and a lot of spontaneity and creativity, which I think is also lacking in film and TV. You know, for no fault of the creators, it's more the way that stuff is being funded or made. It's harder to be spontaneous these days, so I wanted to keep that alive, that romantic dream alive.
Absolutely. Are there some questions? Yeah, there's one here.
Intanto complimenti per il film.
If you want to have this, you can have the translation. Yeah, I don't know how to wear them. No, you just wear it in your face.
Intanto complimenti per il film.
Grazie.
Un film divertente. Una curiosità proprio che volevo chiedere a tutti i tre. Qual è stato l'episodio, lei come regista, che più ha amato e voi come attori che più avete amato?
I'm going to let you guys answer that first.
Okay, sorry. Firstly, let me just say I've never used this equipment, and I think it's absolutely marvelous.
Yeah.
Why doesn't everyone should just use it all the time. It's fucking amazing. Anyway, I'd say when I think we were probably set in wartime Britain during the Blitz, and I got to be a magician, and I remember wearing a really lovely wig that day, and weirdly, oddly for me, I spent a lot of time looking in the mirror thinking, you look all right like this. I really enjoyed it. So, I mean, there's no art involved. I just like the wig.
There's a lot of wigs in the film.
There's a lot
it's
of
a
wigs,
wig
yeah.
film.
It's a wig-heavy film.
Yes.
Yeah. I think they're saying it's the wig-heaviest film here at Locarno.
I think my favorite's are also very wig-based. I have a look in Scotland that's that massive, like, droopy wig. I love that. The post-apocalypse was that was a lot of fun. That was one of my favorite days of work ever in my life. Yeah.
Oh, fills my heart with joy. I mean, I mainly wrote this film to fulfill the unmet needs of actors wanting to wear various wigs. Because as an actor, that's all I want to do. It's just how many wigs can I wear in this film? I'm actually really not joking in some ways. But for me, I love the 1980s. For me, it's like the pudding that you get after eating your vegetables of the film. There's no vegetables in the film. Sorry, this metaphor's going nowhere.
I love it. Please keep going.
But, you know, for me, it's like when I get to that bit, I'm like, because I love the 1980s so much. I think, like, that's my natural spiritual home is the 1980s, because I just love it so much. But, you know, I can't pick, really, because the whole film is my favorite things that I like to do. I don't know if you're allowed to do that as a director. You're not allowed to admit it, that it's like, I just wanted to put all my favorite things in a film. I'm not sure you're allowed to enjoy your job that much these days. You're supposed to be punished more. But for me, like, every single era is like something that I like and that I enjoy. It's a film world, a fantasy world that I find magical.
Yeah, and each area is also shot slightly differently. I mean, it feels like you've also did some different lenses, maybe, or according to the different areas.
We filmed with a different style in mind. I mean, really, it's if you're a film lover, it's a film lover's film, because, you know, these fantasy eras, they're not historically accurate. They're someone's perception of those eras. So it's like what someone's read in a book or seen in film. So that was a joy to create. And then, you know, you're looking at what films were made in those eras. So you might have, you know, Woody Allen films made in New York, so then we'd be more handheld. And then you might have Barry Lyndon that is, you know, typifies how people might imagine an 18th century film should be. And so then you've got more composed shots. And that was the joy of it, really, of kind of going, we're going to take the audience on this journey almost through like cinema history as well as like history. It's a small, it's sort of about romance and how our ideas of romance have changed through the eras, which is about individualism or poetry or narratives or film or, you know, music. And so it's about following that journey. Yeah.
And Hazard, I love the scene with she really wants to meet him again, with the horses and going back and provoking her luck.
Well, it was also, I wanted to have the audience feel like I'm sort of familiar with each era, even though it's strange, to kind of give that feeling of reincarnation, that you sort of go, I sort of recognize this because a scene is influenced by Pretty in Pink or influenced by Gone with the Wind or something, which there were all those influences in the film. There's about 100, I would say 100 films at least. Each scene, I'm like, there's 5 different films that influence this scene or this shot or, you know, whatever. So it was a way of sort of getting the audience to feel like, oh, this is familiar to me. So it's almost like emulating the feeling of reincarnation, that recognition. Yeah. And then we did that with music as well, like bringing the motif back. And so people feel like, I know this song. You're like, you don't. You just, we play it a lot in the film. Yeah.
There's some questions. Maybe a question for the producer. Because we talked about the many films, the reference, the many wigs, the immense creativity. It feels like limitless, the way you talk about it, Alice, but I'm sure, you know, in terms of production, there must have been quite a few challenges, because I heard you shot during 22 days, only?
Correct, yeah. It was nothing but limits. It was just limits. Everywhere we looked, it was limits. I think the most amazing thing to say about it, which is why for me it was the most fun on a film set I've ever had, it was down to the team, and obviously led by Alice on that. But if you sort of understand, while all these idiots are enjoying their chat about wigs, while the wigs are getting changed, it takes 2 hours. And Alice is in every shot and is also directing. And so it took not just Alice's energy and trust in the production team and everyone else, but for the other cast as well to be willing to play and work around her and work around the difficulties of trying to film 6 different time periods in 4 weeks, all in Wales, with Alice in every shot. And with more animals and pink cats, horses, dogs, canaries. I mean, you name it, producer's nightmare. But Tom Wood is here as well, who's a producer on the film as well, and he would bore the brunt of it as well. But yeah, it's all down to the team and the fun that we all had doing it. I could talk about the problems all day, but I laughed most of every day. thanks to these guys.
Yeah, there's a thing that you have in the UK. It's called horrible histories, and I discovered this when I was 12. I went to the UK just for a term, and I used to learn history the French way, so dates, everything by heart. And then I discovered horrible histories.
Which I'm in. Did you know that?
Yeah, I
know.
know.
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to start. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's and I was wondering how much this experience that you had with horrible histories was kind of a way to play around with this story.
I didn't think of it as really influencing it, but I think it gave me a lot of knowledge about production and how it's possible to film a lot of different historical periods in, you know, one location. If you find one location that has a Victorian house and a Georgian house and a river and a hut, you can film 4 different centuries in that space, and you don't have to location change. And the same with, you know, the wig changes had to be incredibly fast and stuff. So it's just stuff like that production-wise, it's useful because you start to realize what's possible, I suppose, on a TV budget. And I played Marie Antoinette, actually, in that show. So probably I got a liking for a giant wig, maybe, perhaps at that point. The bigger the better, I'd say. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, the British comedy is so much. There's Monty Python. There's so many things that probably inspired Horrible Histories, but also inspire me. And you know, I just love history, and I love the history of makeup and the history of costumes. And I think often those fields get neglected somewhat in film. It's all about the lighting and the camera and And we work with some fantastic designers that really, on a low budget, brought the film to life and kind of made it all possible. So just recognizing what was possible, I think, from that show.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the humor because it's not just humor in, you know, the characters that are obviously quite surprising every time, but also the situations they are in, and the words, the dialogues are just excellent. And really, I was wondering, like, were you completely free, and also, you know, in connection with the sex and everything, or did you at one point decided, okay, no, this point we want to go to?
It's really interesting, I think, with all comedy, because my instinct is I don't know what the cut-off point is. I put really awful things in my comedy, and then you sort of recognise, like, it comes down to the edit sometimes. I think you literally go, we've pushed it too far now. And we're going to lose people with this, you know, and you really don't know until the edit. And, like, I can think with my debut film, for certain, there was, like, there was a character in it, and my character was kissing this guy in the back of a taxi, and we sort of were like, it's okay for him to vomit into his white wig and then kiss her. But then there were worse stuff that happened that we went, no, it's not funny anymore. So I think that was always, you know, especially with, like, George's character, that he is the antagonist, he's the villain. Yeah. But there was a certain point where if you pushed him too far, it just became possibly too dark.
Too dark.
Yes. And you know, I love what Nick brought to it, because he kind of brought this redemption to him that you like, he probably needs to go to some rehab, and in the next life he might need to, like, you know, he might need to have some anger management therapy in the next life, and maybe he'll be okay. So it's sort of this idea that, you know, you can redeem people, and there is, like, forgiveness, and there, you know, and it would have been easy to kind of go with that character. No, let's just destroy him. He's just bad. Let's just get rid of him, you know. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to kind of go, this is a world where I think, because I've made a lot of horror films as well as an actor, and as a director, I've made a horror film. It's very easy, as a female director specifically, to go, right, it's going to be really dark. And I felt like it was more challenging to make something that has some hope. Actually, I felt that was quite radical for a female director. Because these days there's a lot of women making very, very dark films, and I just felt like I want to make something that has some spiritual glimmer at the end of the tunnel, that maybe things might be okay in the end. I mean, yeah, there's also, you can watch the film in 2 ways. You can watch it as a fantasist or a realist, and you can choose which ending you want to have.
Yeah. Love that. This film also has, I think, it has like an all-time bad taste joke that just works. It's like so beautiful. Do you know which one I mean?
No. I'm just not racking my brain. It's got quite a lot of bad taste jokes in it.
Which is like, as in I was, like, the first time I read it, I was like, that won't end up in the film. I was like, and I was laughing hysterically, and I was like, oh my God.
Oh, I know.
Do you know what I mean?
I know the
Yeah.
one you mean. And it still makes me nervous because I think I might go to hell.
No, it's
because of
amazing.
that. But at the very least, and I ask for forgiveness as well. This is what we have to remember, like, as writers and stuff, you kind of go, do I get redemption? Do I get to apologize for when I make mistakes? And, we're at a point creatively where, people are very sensitive about what they put, especially in a comedy. So, yeah, it's interesting. And I'm just there, like, going, I don't know what's right or wrong. I let people tell me, and I listen. I try to listen, And I think that's the way it should be as a creative.
Yeah.
I might choose not to listen. I might go, yeah, it's all right.
You can decide.
Yeah,
later on.
exactly. We can all decide. We're all intelligent people.
We have time for one more question here.
E volevo chiederle,
Sì, yeah. Back to the wonderful tool.
tra le fonti di ispirazione del film c'è anche L'amore attraverso i secoli, che era un film del 67, e tra i registi c'era Godard, c'era Bolognini, c'erano un bel po' di gente e parlavano dell'amore attraverso i secoli. E questa era la prima domanda. La seconda domanda, oltre a Woody Allen, quali altri autori ha usato per ispirarsi nel corso dei secoli? Quali altri film ha visto per adattare i costumi, come ispirazione, ecco?
I mean, I could start listing and then I would never stop. But I'm a big fan of Powell and Pressburger, British directors, and I love their use of colour. And I feel like British films, at some point, we stopped using colour. I don't know why. We got very grey and realist, and which I love social realist films as well. But I felt like I wanted to bring theatre back into filmmaking, into a British film. But there's lots of different, I don't even know where to start because there's so many, and then my mind just dries up when I actually try and think of specific things, but, there's like, the story of Adele H., which was about the daughter of Victor Hugo, which is this obsessive stalker woman, before they had psychologists to diagnose women or men with that condition. There's a Max Ophüls film, which is about a woman who writes obsessive letters to, I'm going to have forgotten what the name of it is, I'm sorry. I did a lot of research on obsessive love, and especially female characters that are obsessively in love with people.
80s pop videos.
Oh yeah, so many 80s pop videos that were massive inspirations, but also things like Girlfriends, which is a late 70s film by a female director called Claudia. It was so terrible. That influenced like the space, but also late 70s films have influence on the 70s, on the 80s section, which is just like French Connection, even Dirty Harry, just like for the way that we filmed some of those bits. There's so many.
We started a Pinterest board very early, and Alice got involved, and I looked at it one day, and she sort of put up 30 images from the things, and I looked at it the next day, and there's like 500. And we were like, oh God, okay, we're trying to make packs out of it. There's like more and more coming. But if you look at that Pinterest board now, it is the film. It's quite incredible, yeah.
Yeah. There are even things like, because I was looking at Technicolor films, even just things like Sinbad. I was like going, look at the colour palette of this. I want to use that. And actually, Nick was talking about the 1940s section. That's very Powell and Pressburger to me because we were using these really bright primary colours. But yeah, each single, like even the Victorian bit, I was like looking at the piano. It's interesting, Jane Campion is being recognised at the festival, and the Innocents, which sort of another Victoriana kind of. I mean, I just could go. I could go on. It's almost like I need to look at my list of like, this. But any scene, I could talk to you about what different influences were on each, even a frame. You know, there's a frame like where she's laying in the bed, and that's like Gone with the Wind with Scarlett O'Hara lying in the bed when she's given birth, and we copied that.
Great. So we have to wrap up, but see you tonight on Piazza Grande. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Locarno.
Amazing. Can you make sure these get clean, because I've got an ear infection? Thanks.